Shemaya Criso for friendai for a new Mad Musings, and I look at Zadmir's game, a Welsh werewolf, and Shanfar Pushquin Gish Gogero Shondawish Shantasilio Gogogok. This is a short 2-page adventure using the Tricube system that's perfect if you need a diversion for an evening, or if the desire to solve a murder mystery strikes you. It's simplistic, limited, and 50 cents on Drive-Thru RPG. So are you getting what you paid for, or is this a Welsh knot? I'm Mr. Welch, and it's time to visit the old country. The game is fairly recent, having come out on April Fool's Day, with the author thinking of getting non-Welsh speakers to pronounce Shanfar Pushquin Gish Gogero Shondabush Shantasilio Gogogok was a joke on its own. Little hint, the word is actually a sentence with all spaces taken out. For somebody who doesn't Sharad Kimrog, it's as daunting as hell, but if you do speak the language, it's pretty easy to read. The author in this case is Richard Woolcock, with the artist of the one piece of art being Mohammed Hassan. Again, it's literally 2 pages long and self-contained. It's an evening's diversion and not a full-blown campaign. So when half your group calls in dead and the DM wants to know what to do with the other half, it's time to grill some leeks and change your name to Jones because we're hunting werewolves. Dice mechanics are a d6 system, and it uses a die pool for rolling. You get 1 to 3 dice depending on factors like specialization, and you try to hit a target number of 4 to 6 depending on difficulty. 5 is the typical difficulty, but it can go up or down. Normally you get a die pool equal to 2 dice. If you're trying to do something that requires special knowledge you don't have, it drops your pool by 1. If the task is key to your chosen trait, you gain a die. It does stack, so if you have to perform a crafty task and have that trait, you gain the die. But if it requires a specialty that you don't have, then you lose the die for a complete wash. Character creation is a single paragraph. Actually, just about all the rules are a single paragraph. You get 1 trait to define your character, divided between Agile, Brawny, and Crafty. So if you were making Pecos Dylan, you'd probably go with Agile, which applies to dexterity and similar checks. Then you get a subject. These apply in the harder checks. If you don't have the required subject, as mentioned, things get hard on you. Fortunately, Pecos Dylan is one of the best Welsh gunslingers in all of Shanfar Pushquin Gish Gogero Shondabush Shantasilio Gogogok, so he takes gunfighting as his subject. Then you move on to more specific character designer topics. Perks can reduce the difficulty of checks with the use of karma. You spend a karma, and you can justify your perk in this situation, then the target number on the die goes down by 1. In this case, Pecos Dylan takes the trait Deadeye, making him the fastest gun north, south, east, and west of the Anfon Reed Ilion. Lastly, you get a quirk, which works as a penalty if it comes into play during the game, but it does reward you if you still succeed. Keeping with Pecos Dylan's character art, he gets the quirk Trigger Happy, which if you've been following ammo prices lately, you already know how much of a disadvantage this quirk is. Once you've finished all that, you get 3 karma and 3 resolve. This is basically luck and health. You spend karma to reduce difficulty, and resolve is how much damage you can take before you're knocked out of the scene. You're not dead. In fact, all of you are quick healers. But if you lose all of your resolve, then you're just out of play for a while before you come back later fully healed. Similar to It Came from the Late Show. Karma can only be spent if you can justify getting a bonus based on your trait. You gain karma by succeeding on a check that is penalized by your quirk. You can also spend karma to buy a clue, or to nudge the story in a particular direction. And of course, good role-playing can restore your karma. It's meant to be in flux, so don't hoard it. Not like you can save it for later adventures anyways. The game is set up to be a mystery, not a combat simulator. This being set in the UK, guns are a rarity, and more than likely you'll have to settle things with fists or knives. Because the UK does love their knives. A little too much according to some of the Brits I see on TV. Living in Texas, where we can buy firearms at Walmart, you're not going to find me faulting someone for arming himself. That being said, I'm not buying that .22 target rifle for you and mailing it back to Japan just because you thought it was cute. Even if it's pink and has Hello Kitty on the stock. I will go to jail. You will go to jail. The nice store clerk that lets you hold it will go to jail. So no Hello 22 target rifle for you. I still haven't changed my mind on that, Kimiko. That being said, as Pecos Dylan is part Texan on his father's side, I'm sure he will have no problem getting a firearm. Just leave him in a tool shed for about 5 minutes and he should be able to craft a Benelli Nova 12 gauge easy enough. Then it's off to the mystery to find out if it's a big dog that's haunting the city, or a Gwishgi, the black dog of the moors. There's even a chance it's an actual werewolf, though I'm betting it's just old man Mervyn trying to scare everyone off so he can buy the land cheap. The clues are given from a random chart. Actually, everything is created from a random chart. It can be anything from missing people, strange footprints, a beat-up cat, and of course dead sheep. Because you can't set a game in Wales without sheep. There's a lot of local sites to check out in your investigation. Some are pretty mundane, like large fields of grass or a creepy guy's house. Others are actual sites around the town, like St. Cecilio's Church, Brinkeshi Dhu, a Neolithic tomb found nearby, or the Marquis of Angleslee's column, which is currently shut down for repairs. But don't let that stop you. Chase that werewolf all the way up to the column for that epic showdown, or to at least give Pecos Dylan a better shot. Of course, there are complications, and there is an appropriate chart for that as well. The weather could turn brutally cold, random drunks could start a fight, large dogs that may or may not be related to your search appear, or you could stumble in the middle of a bachelorette party while you are trying to keep a low profile. If the party's having too easy of a time, or are just looking bored, that's when you spring a complication. There's also a twist chart if the GM is stumped. This is just roll 2 dice and look at the icon the roll indicates. There's nothing at all describing the image, just meant to provide an idea of what to throw at the party. The image of a dotted line means the party could get lost, find a map, find themselves suddenly garroted, or trapped in a family circus cartoon. And remember that Little Billy takes no prisoners. So how does the adventure end? That's up to the game master. A Welsh werewolf and Shanfar Pushquin Gish Gogero Shondabush Shantasilio Gogogok is a story hook with rules. It's not a full-blown module. You don't want this to be a module. You want it to be an adventure with lots of replayability. Maybe it is a werewolf, in case you need to head over to Roland's Pharmacy to get some film, because silver isn't going to be easy to find otherwise. And yes, we all know what it's made out of, so don't give me that DMs. You could end up chasing a ghostly dog over the valley wetlands, trying to see where it's going to take you to help right or wrong. There's no wrong way to play the game. Again, it's just a diversion, not a campaign. There's no rules for experience. Pecos Dillon is not leveling up. Maybe his gunslinging prowess puts down the monster in one game. And maybe the next game, when you run into the hen party, his sexy Texas drawls, you want to end up with him dragged to Tilsal's Briodas to pick out a wedding dress the next day. That's always a risk when you're in a foreign land talking in a low and slow drawl. The next thing you know, they want to see your gun. Your actual gun. I ain't kidding. You drive or fly anywhere outside the Lone Star State, and everybody thinks you're packing all kinds of heat, and they want to touch it. I'm not saying their assumption is wrong, I'm just saying it's definitely a stereotype. The key to success for this game, if you're going to spring it on your players, is doing your homework first. Don't worry about trying to speak Welsh. It's a ridiculously difficult language to pronounce, and you're not going to pick up the basics in an afternoon of cramming. The language has sounds that don't appear in English, and the words have more mutations than the X-Men. Just stick to the stereotypes and you'll do fine. Lots of rain, lots of sheep, Doctor Who, men's choir, and everyone is named Jones. Tom, Catherine Zeta, Terry, it doesn't matter. They're all named Jones. But at least look up what's in the town first and do your homework. You want to immerse your players in the game? That requires you to know the setting. You can head over to the Taffron Tiguen for a pint, or Glan Manau for some piscot and Schlagoden. Or just go to the Golden Bird Chinese takeaway if fish and chips isn't their thing. There's a lot of local restaurants, pubs, and stores that can provide all sorts of clues, red herrings, or quirky NPCs to interact with. It's not a large town. Just make a note of what's where, and you've got half the adventure written. And I'm not joking about it being a small town. Shanfar Pushquin Gish Gogero Shondabush Shantasilio Gogogok is about the size of Horseshoe Bay over near Austin in size, and population-wise it's got a few more people than Blum to give you an idea of just how few people there are. There's a lot of other smaller towns around, but don't overdo it. You've got the town, you've got the moors, you've got the river, it's really green and hilly, so you can leave out the part of your adventure with the camels in it. Horses, sure, but no camels. And if you want to drive home the sheep stereotype, I suggest you make mutton busting the only way the Welsh travel in small towns. Not like your players will probably know much about Wales. My ancestors are a proud people, but we ain't a numerous one. So what do you do once you've met every possible person you could find in Shanfar Pushquin Gish Gogero Shondabish Shantasilio Gogogok? Well, if you like this format and you want more adventures, Zadmore Games has a bunch of them compiled in the Tricube Tales bundle. There's over 24 adventures ranging all over several settings. They've got the same rules, because why wouldn't they? You make your characters, you roll the scenario, and then you explore the brief setting given until you've had enough fun, it's time to go home, and then the adventure ends. Weird West, space opera, stock horror, and a lot more. There's quite a few adventures, and the price for all of them is about 15 bucks. You can get each one for 50 cents each. It's a good introduction to role-playing game if you're trying to convince your family you aren't trying to summon elder evils. At least until you tell them I'm going to play a game with you and it comes out Rudy and Mindy Shot-Eyed Gim Giddy Key. In which case, you're on your own, buddy. That's going to wrap up a Welsh werewolf and Shanfar Pushquin Gish Gogero Shondabush Shantasilio Gogogok. It's a diversion, nothing more. You're not going to make a campaign out of this. The rules are barely 4 paragraphs long. But it is fun. More importantly, for a lot of people, it's less than $1. How many adventures can you put in a town with just 3,000 people? You can only run so many murder mysteries until you reach Murder, She Wrote levels of genocide. Seriously, Cabot Cove has a population of 3,500 and a murder rate of 149 people per 100,000. Or 15 people more than the murder rate of Tijuana, the place with the next highest murder rate. But if you get your kicks slaughtering the population of a small Welsh tourist attraction, be my guest. But might I suggest you get actual therapy instead of taking it out on the people in your head? I need a new Mad Musings topic, and I've got a huge backup, so let's see what the next game to talk about is. How about my latest binge purchase from Half Price Books, the Lone Wolf RPG? The game that asks a lot of questions, like, how would you all like to play in a game that gives you wizards, gun-toting dwarves, and skilled thieves, and every single one of you only gets to play a ranger? Or the pressing question of, hey, I bet you I can write an RPG with just 2 stats. Those kinds of questions. Or like, how did I get roped into buying an entire RPG I couldn't convince myself to play after reading the book? That game. But until then, remember, Kimaru Ambith, y'all.